Now, one of the things that we talked about a little earlier is how our life experience enriches us. It makes us who we are. None of us don't have it, right? There's no one out there who's unmarred by, whatever they might feel they're being marred by. And nothing about you is limiting your opportunities. Nothing at all. There's no rejection, like there's only selection. So let's say, for instance, when I was a single mother, I could have looked statistically at the fact that now I'm a lot less attractive to most guys. But those guys weren't for me to begin with. There was no reduction in prospects. Do you know what I mean? Or you could bring race into it. Oh God, I remember in high school all these guys wouldn't date me because I was black, right? So I had limited prospects. It wasn't fair. They weren't for me. They just simply weren't for me. Like, there's nothing limiting your prospects. Nothing.
I hear women say it all the time.
All the time about this and that and the other thing.
I hear them say constantly, oh, there's just no men in me. There's just no men in me.
Exactly.
And dating's terrible.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, yeah, it is because
If you believe
that's
that,
how you
it's
think
true.
it is.
That's exactly right. And the women that I know who don't believe it are doing quite amazingly in the dating scene. Who don't believe it and are actively dating. People who are into dating.
I've never believed that I'm not actively dating, but I've had relationships. And I've always met people in the most unexpected ways.
Exactly. Yeah,
Always.
totally. These tips you're learning here would save the Manhattan dating scene.
Yeah.
Whole bunch of women out there performing, they're not being authentic, they're not being straightforward, they're looking for, a lot of them, for the guy to settle down and have kids with, which isn't making him feel very comfortable about committing, Like, a lot of them have an agenda, and a lot of them are just looking for a guy, a guy who fits the bill, a guy who looks good on paper, and the guys aren't responding to that. Like, these tools would change the whole Manhattan dating scene. It'd be pretty cool to see Manhattan dating taking place with the women knowing these things and how to relate to men and how to bring out the best in men and even just believing in men. Yeah. So, healing, okay? Most of us have these things from our past that we're still tripping over, and that because we're tripping over it, it's making us repellent to men, So, huge, existentially huge, that as far as, from a human perspective, you never should have had to go through it, but from a spiritual perspective, it was exactly what you needed to go through. But those are sometimes the things really tripping us up, and we don't realize it. It's almost like our soul has decided, without our mind being aware of it, that that's just something we never want anyone to see up close, right? So we're carrying this natural repellent because there's a secret part of us that really doesn't want to ever have to expose that to somebody or tell somebody what we've been through, or, But if you can just sort of accept whatever it is, then you can make yourself magnetic, not despite what you've been through, but because of what you've been through. Whatever it is, no matter, how painful, how shameful, how embarrassing, how humiliating, how bizarre, how outrageous, how, no matter what, how traumatic, how tragic, whatever it is. And one of the best ways to forgive is to change the story around it. Just change the story. And believe in the new story. Change the story completely. So I'll give you an example from my own personal history, which is that, you probably all know, as a 4, I was adopted. And there's this really it's funny to me, it's not supposed to be funny, a song by Eagle Eye Cherry. Have any of you guys, any of you remember him, Nana Cherry's brother, from back in the day? He has a song called Permanent Tears, which is about a girl who was put up for adoption, and the lyrics are, on the day of her arrival, no one was there to meet her, something of a sad one, the girl with permanent tears, born without a family, born without a name. I mean, it just goes on like that, right? And so if I were to accept that story as my story, that would be pretty tragic, right? Oh my God, she was born without a family, no one wanted her. But if someone who's adopted, the other side of the coin is true at the same time, right? So without me having to do any spiritual gymnastics, an adopted person was also wanted, right? We focus on, oh my God, who would put a kid up for adoption? Like, you know, who would do that? It's unnatural. You don't give away your child, right? But you're wanted. If you're adopted, somebody wanted you, you know? So to change the story even to that, but I like to actually change the story to an even greater extreme, which is that I left home with my eye on freedom. I left home at birth, you know? I left at birth. I energetically decided this was not for me. I wanted a family who was more cosmopolitan. I wanted a family where I wouldn't be entrenched in, you know, the racial dynamics. My parents are black and white, but they believe in race, and I grew up in a white family in Canada who knew nothing about race. So I didn't inherit their racial spreads, you know. I figured it all out for myself and was equipped to then meet. I met my biological parents when I was 19, and they were married, and they're still married, and they'd raised my sister without me, so that could be a big source of victimhood, right? Like, oh my God. But I feel very empowered about the fact that I chose something else, and that that's a much more powerful story than poor me.
And it feels like the truth.
And it is the truth.
I can see it. I can see
and
it.
it is the truth, exactly. Yeah, and that it would have been all wrong for me. And the good news is that at the age of 19, when I was developed enough to be able to bring them back into my life, I did. You know, because I did a half-hearted search. I simply called up Hennepin County in Minneapolis to see what my options were for searching, and they found my case immediately. They found them right away, and so I was just really inquiring, and they were like, oh, by the way, we know their location, and if you want to know anything about them, you know. So very quickly I had this access to my past, and I was like, oh sure, being ever the adventure. So then I met them, and now I know them, but there was no loss to me, you know? There was not a loss there, but I have so many adopted friends who are in the state of permanent tears because they're only focused on the family that didn't want them, not the family that did raise them. And so, you know, so that's how you can change your story to empower you, whatever your story is. You can change it, you know? You can change it to focus on the positive, but you can also change the story more dramatically to a really empowering story of being an actor rather than an acted upon, right? So energetically and spiritually, I chose those parents instead of these ones, but I still wanted to be half black and half white, so I had to have these parents biologically, right? It was like how to get all of the pieces in place of who I was meant to be is what I contracted for. And so A, it's meant to be, and B, it couldn't have been any other way. I couldn't be me had it been any other way. And then that's what forgiveness is, right? And that's the definition of forgiveness, is giving up the idea that it could have been any other way. That's all it is. That's all that forgiveness is. There's nothing to do with culpability or accountability. It has nothing to do with saying it's okay what the person did. Accepting it the way it was is not the same as endorsing you know, whatever happened to you that might have been tragic or traumatic. It's not the same as endorsing it. It's just simply the surrender rather than the resistance. The flow of energy in, this is how it was, this is my life. And it goes back to Amanda's point about living from that place of wisdom, that like this is life, and we all have these things. Sometimes kind of egregious challenges, shocking challenges. I know from working with people, you'd be shocked. I haven't had a client yet who didn't have at least one thing that you would never think from looking at them that they ever even had a remote encounter with. All of us have this, these histories and these Mars and these, you know, skeletons in our closet. We all do. And so let those things be magnetic for you and not repellent, you know? Let yourself surrender and accept whatever it is you've been through, you know? And I think that's one of the best ways you can generate healing is through accepting your past, telling a new story about it, believing in the new story, and making it empowering for you. And knowing that in getting what you want, you're going to be much more magnetic to getting what you want by having this new story, right? Like, I'll just use I have a million such stories I could tell you, but I'll use adoption again since I started down that line. imagine I meet the love of my life and I'm like, yeah, I was adopted. It's not sexy, is it? I was put up for adoption at birth. When I had my daughter, I couldn't believe how much I loved her. And I mean, it made me feel all the more victimized. Who would do that to their child? It's not right, it's not heroic, it's not wise, it's not mature, it's not galvanizing, and it's not inspiring.
Say it the other way now, as if you were saying it to him.
I grew up in Family Canada, my biological parents are married, I know both sets, you know, that's my story and that's my truth.
Yeah.
It's intriguing.
Yeah.
Exactly. This dad's a white German who was raised in Kenya. That dad's a Black American who was raised in Denver, Colorado. It's fun. It's fun. It's really fun. Yeah. You know, and it's really freeing because, you know, I'm all about freedom. We can free ourselves.
On that topic specifically,
Yes.
what if you've been through something really traumatic?
Yeah.
That's in part of you, you've forgiven, you've worked through it,
Yeah.
you've healed, but it's still an important event in your life. Do you share it? Is it necessary to even share it?
Mm.
Maybe there's a time and space to share it.
You know what I've gotten from my cards all the time? This is a really important question. Because you don't have to. And that goes against anything any therapist will tell you, marriage counselor, right? You can't have secrets. Well, according to my cards, you can have whatever secrets you want, as long as you're in your integrity and your authenticity. We don't owe it to each other to share.
Yeah.
You don't, especially, and I get this all the time through my cards, and I have for years, and Alison Armstrong corroborates it. She's like, don't tell men about your sexual history. Don't tell them if it has anything to do with sex, especially don't tell them.
Yeah.
They don't need to know, they don't want to know. They can't handle it.
Well, why do men ask?
Yeah, exactly.
So
So
many men
what
ask.
if they ask you things?
I would just be coy. I wouldn't
Right.
lie.
I just choose not to
Doesn't lie,
answer,
but
and,
yeah.
and then I've had people tell me, and I have to say, as a woman, I really don't want to know. And if the number
You
is
can't
some-
win at that game
Yeah,
because
well,
they
yes.
can't handle the answer,
Well,
whatever.
why do
it
they want
is.
to know? I just want to, why do they want to know?
They don't think they want to know. Men always overestimate what they can handle. They do it all the time, and it's a good. It's wise to know when they're getting in over their own heads. That's one thing I'm proud of myself in my relationship. I know what he can handle and what he can't, and I don't deliver up what he wants. I deliver up what I believe he needs. I use my intuition.
Yeah.
You know. And look, you know, half the time it's a test, and you're going to come out the loser.
I had that
You know?
recently where I was asked something and
Mhm.
I responded by saying, are you sure you really want to know that? Like
Yes.
in a sort of really kind, sort of playful way. And he was like, actually, don't tell me. Actually, I don't want And it was great. Like there was no tension. It wasn't as though something's hidden. It wasn't such a big deal, but
Yeah.
I mean,
it's one of those things that could have been a loose cannon had I tried to fumble around an
Right.
answer.
That was a perfect example of holding your space as well.
Yeah, it was really good. It was
Because
sort of
you
clarity
just held your
and-
space and you
Yeah.
didn't hurt him. You didn't go to, you weren't like a wall went
Yeah,
up,
or trying
you
to
know.
play
And
with
now you seem like
words.
you've slept with 3,000 people and you're too shy to answer. Like,
Right, yeah.
like you were compassionate, engaging, but you didn't just. That's good. It sounds like you handled it perfectly. Yeah. And you can lovingly say, oh, I'm not going to tell you that. A lady would never tell something like that. I mean, look, I'm not a virgin, but, you know, I'm not a whore either. Like, you know, just keep it light. Keep it manageable for him. Yeah. But sexual history, so I get that through my cards all the time, but then Alison Armstrong, that's her big mantra. Like, they can't handle it, you can't win with that. Yes, there may be two men out there. You might wind up with one of those men, but I wouldn't even take the chance. I wouldn't take the chance on that. And I've seen many a person come to me who's got some horror story. The guy's like asking her more and more about it over the years.
Yeah.
Like, well,
Was it a session?
was it this? Was it that? Was it better than us? Was it? Like he can't put it out of, they can't put it out of their heads for years to come. And if you truly heal it, then it really doesn't need sharing. Whatever we might have in our history doesn't have to be shared. It's not some cosmic mandate. And especially if it's healed and it's not gonna become an unspoken, you know, like a pain body thing. Like he's dealing with someone who's got the symptoms of someone who was abused, and you're not coping to the fact that you were abused, right? That's not a good situation. But if you can truly forgive, forget, put it in your past, then at least as far as my readings have gone historically, you're within your rights to not share. It's not seen as concealment by the universe. So that should help you, and I'm not saying don't tell a guy, it's not a rule, I'm just saying that if it helps you to move forward and you have things you rather not share with someone that might be hindering you in going forward with a partner and really being vulnerable and open, that there's no God-given mandate to share that with anyone, and that might be freeing for you to know that, you know, that there are things you don't ever have to share with anyone, and that, you know, and that it's okay. Yeah, so it's not like a call to be seen in your completeness, you know, that's just a relationship fantasy. That's like a 20-year-old fantasy.
Right.
I'm going to be seen, and I'm going to be known, and I'm going to be in, you know, sharing everything with somebody. It's not even like that, you know, marriage isn't even like that anyways, why bother? So quickly it'll become moot anyways as the relationship turns into building a life together. Those things that get shared in those early months are so not what the relationship is grounded on, right? It's only in those first months that these things seem pertinent and important anyways. But yeah, call to forgive and to just accept the past, and a call to be in surrender and let it make you magnetic rather than repellent.